everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of I've Been Playing, where today we are taking a look at The Quarry. The Quarry is the latest game from Supermassive Games, the people behind Until Dawn and the Dark Pictures anthology. This itself is not part of the Dark Pictures anthology, that should be coming out in October, but is instead more of a spiritual successor to Until Dawn, and is similar in, let's be honest, many ways, but with improvements from what they've learned from their past games. In this particular game, you play as a variety of camp counselors who have gotten stuck at the summer camp they were counseling at for one extra night through, well, one of their own faults. And things go horribly wrong, as you can probably imagine if you know anything about the rest of the games that Supermassive have done. It's kind of another situation where you have to survive until dawn, or until morning, but it's not spoilers for Until Dawn if you don't know Wendigos this time, but is in fact something else. Now you may be able to guess, you may have seen it already. I knew what the monsters were going to be when I went into this, because this has been out for a little while now, and I just became aware of it from people I follow on YouTube, though I didn't watch any gameplay. But obviously, you are trying to do what you can to avoid getting killed horribly. Or kill everyone. It depends on how you want to play the game, really. This, of course, is played out very much in the same way as their other games. A lot of dialogue options and quick time events, although those can be adjusted a little bit. We'll get into that in just a second. But it has the same kind of, and I don't mean this as an insult necessarily, just as a descriptor, a B horror movie. Specifically in this case a teen slasher a la Friday the 13th is the obvious comparison. So in all honesty, it would probably make the most sense to have at least one character die. Now since this is very much an interactive movie, you can play it yourself, you can play it with friends, you can pass the controller around, there are different options for playing with other people. I believe I've never played one of these with other people. It sounds like a great time, but I've never done it. But there is an option to just kind of watch different decisions and see what would have happened if you picked a different one, or maybe plan your route ahead of time, or there's one option that is more just like, it's called movie mode. I'm assuming you just watch the entire thing from a preset perspective, or maybe those two things are mixed together. I didn't really do it that way because I'm not here to watch a movie, you know? I know there's minimal interaction in these games, and that's probably one of the things some people don't like about them. Which is fair, I don't generally like games where there's not much interaction, but because the story is kind of the thing you go to these particular games for, it doesn't bother me as much. But you can just watch it like a movie if you want. This is something they've had in all of their games, possibly not Until Dawn, I don't remember, but all of their more recent games, by which I mean the Dark Pictures games, they've had that option, from what I can remember. The first thing I noticed about this story is that it's definitely better than Until Dawn, and certainly some of the, well, there are only 3 Dark Pictures so far, but it's definitely better than at least one of them. Little Hope's ending was very, very stupid. But it does seem to be a more cohesive, coherent plot. Of course, a lot of what you get from the plot tends to depend on what things you find, what clues you find, what evidence you find, what connections you can make from different items to other items, and figure out what's going on. At least that's the way it worked Until Dawn. There was like a certain number of things you had to connect in order to get a certain character to live at the end, although it didn't really turn out very well for them anyway. But to keep them alive, you had to find certain things, and it's kind of the same deal here. There are certain things where you find at the very beginning of the game that came into play at the very end of the game. The thing is, you have to do a very specific thing to use that thing, and I, once again, as with Until Dawn, got into the very last bit of the game with everyone alive, and I missed one room and the one item that would have kept one character alive, and then I missed the shot that I was going to take on the creature by like a quarter of an inch, which I didn't think I did, but the game thought I did, and then she died. And it was very annoying, so I had to go back and get the ending with all of them alive, because they were all basically alive anyway until that happened. But even without that, I think this one probably has the most coherent plot of all of them. It doesn't seem like stuff comes out of nowhere, and there are also characters other than your camp counselor that kind of lend some background to stuff. Now, obviously I kept that character alive so he could explain stuff to me. Although, I mean, that wasn't my intention at first, but he was alive so he could explain stuff to me. I don't know if it would be less satisfying if that character died somehow. I assume he can. I assume everyone in this game can die. But I can definitely imagine there being less explanation and exposition about what happened here if that character had died. So maybe not all the endings are satisfying. Probably not would be my guess, but it's definitely their best plot so far. Because of this, there also seem to be fewer things in the story that didn't make sense, or like characters popping up where it didn't make sense, which could happen on occasion in some of the other games. There would be things that people would just show up out of nowhere, or things were suddenly connected that didn't seem like they should be, or weren't connected when they seemed like they should. So there's a little less of that, at least in the playthrough I went through myself. Another fun thing is that the narrator, so if you don't know, there's always a narrator or a curator or an overarching character that kind of is omniscient about the story and gives you hints on occasion. The one in this story, I'm not gonna say anything specific, but is much more related to the actual plot of the story, which is interesting. Now, she's still not a direct influence and doesn't interact with you in any significant way during the course of the actual game, but it's kind of interesting to see that there's a connection there and the possibility that the narrator or curator characters could maybe come into play in the actual story somehow. The other thing I noticed about this one is a wide range of accessibility options that I don't think I've seen in a lot of other games. They're getting better about it, but there are some things I hadn't seen before. There's one option for a whole range of different color blindness modes. There's a dyslexia-friendly subtitle text option. You can pick whether the QTEs are mashing the button, pressing it once, or they automatically succeed, or I think maybe one of them was hold it down. There's some other stuff on there, which is really nice to see. I've heard that apparently this doesn't happen when you're playing co-op, although I'm wondering if you go into a single-player game, pick the accessibility options, and then go to co-op, if it keeps those settings, I don't know. But they are technically there. It seems silly to me that they'd put them in the single-player and not have them also applied to the multiplayer portion, so I assume if you pick it, like I said, as though you're going into a single-player game and then go back and do a multiplayer game, they're probably still there. I don't know. That would take some experimentation. The only major things I have wrong with this particular game is that there were a couple of times where the timeline just didn't really make sense to me of what was happening at the camp and where people were and what was going on. This was fairly early in the game. I think I just wasn't paying close enough attention. But I know I said it's a more cohesive and coherent plot, so it didn't happen very often, but there was one that made me note it down, so clearly there's a little bit of that there. I don't remember what it was, and it wasn't significant by the end of the game, but there was a little confusion there. The other thing, I only had one glitch while I was playing. I heard it was glitchier when it first came out, but it seems to be fairly okay now. The only one I saw was that sometimes when I paused during dialogue, they would continue talking in the pause screen, and then I'd go out of the pause screen, and then they'd repeat the dialogue because the game had thought the dialogue had paused, and that they hadn't done that yet. So I heard a lot of things twice that I didn't really need to hear twice. But that wasn't even consistent. Like, it did that maybe half the time, and most of the time I didn't pause during dialogue, so it wasn't a big deal. But it was weird because you'd have characters talking over themselves and just, again, repeating the same things, so just don't pause during dialogue, I would say. Oh, and one last thing, right, that is not relevant to anything in particular, but one of the characters, Caitlin, apparently likes Ryan, and I don't know if I'm the only one, or again, wasn't paying close enough attention, but when the hell was that hinted? Can someone explain this to me? Like, I know I'm bad at reading people sometimes, but I did not get that at all. I got the other character who had a crush on him. I got that. That was obvious. But where did that come from? Or is that an interaction or dialogue option that maybe I didn't do, and that's the one thing that seemed out of place? Who knows? Anyway, if you enjoy Supermassive Games so far, and kind of enjoy what they're doing with... It's almost like FMV meets Telltale, is the best way I can kind of describe what they're going for. If you have enjoyed any of their past stuff, even kind of in a B-movie sense, and that it's kind of fun to make fun of it, even though they're also kind of fun to play. Well, kind of fun, that's mean, but you know what I mean. Then I think you'll probably enjoy this one. I think if you don't enjoy their other games, this one is the best of them, so if you're interested in it, I would probably check out someone else playing it, because if you didn't like the other games because of the way they functioned gameplay-wise, what gameplay there is, you're probably not going to enjoy this one any better from that standpoint. I mean, there is literally a movie mode option in the game. You could just watch it. But that's been my experience with the game. Let me know what you think of it down in the comments down below, whether you've played it, whether you want to check it out, whether it's not your type of thing. Let me know anything you want to tell me down in the comments down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed this, and if you're not subscribed yet, consider subscribing, because I do one of these every Monday that I'm able to play a new game, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff on my channel that you can check out. I'll see you next time.